Everything is fine in heaven. Everything is fine in heaven. Everything is fine. You've got your good things, and I've got mine. So, we're going to talk about Eraserhead. Now, if you have never seen Eraserhead, you should probably stop and go watch it before you watch this stream, because this is not going to make any sense. Ow. Not that Eraserhead makes any sense. Actually, it makes a lot of sense. That's why we're going to have this stream. It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. But it makes total sense to me. David Lynch said that Eraserhead was his most spiritual film. He said, Eraserhead is actually my most spiritual film, but people don't see it. Which, when I heard that, I was like, I know exactly what it means. Yeah, of course. This is the most like literal, on the nose spiritual thing I've ever seen, probably. Now, I just watched this for the first time a couple weeks ago, and I've seen it twice now. So let me just explain to you a little bit about my history with this and what it's about. This movie, I had a horror of this movie when I was a child, okay? Because my dad was into this movie, okay? Dad was really into Eraserhead. Dad loved weird movies, okay? This was one of them. And we had the VHS in our VHS tape collection thing. So it was always there. I always remember the VHS copy of Eraserhead being in the collection for as far back as I could remember until the day I left for college, okay? Now, I must have caught a moment of this movie when I was a kid or something. I don't remember it, but I must have caught, Dad must have had this on one day. And I must have caught a minute of it or something, because I just had absolute terror around this movie, right? I must have caught a glimpse of it, and it completely freaked me out. And so the fact that it was always there in the collection, it was this like horrible, fearful object that lived in the tape collection, Eraserhead, you know, and I just always had the horrors about this movie. And in my adult life, no desire to watch it, keep it as far away from me as possible. Just the idea of this movie, which I never even had seen all the way through as an adult, just the idea of this movie just filled me with horror. And indeed, what you hear about Eraserhead is that it's like a nightmare. It's a nightmare on film. And it's very surreal and abstract, and it's got that Lynchian, just, you know, just that, you know, Lynch was really into Francis Bacon, the painter, right? Go look at Francis Bacon paintings. You know, that kind of feeling, just, ugh. That's the kind of thing that I don't want anything to do with. Like, keep it away from me. I don't want to know about it. But recently, I had to sit down and watch it. It's part of this thing, okay? Like, for me, this movie is like this physical representation of fear itself, you know? So I had to start asking myself, like, what am I so afraid of? Why do I have such an aversion to this thing? And I have such an aversion to that kind of aesthetic. I should be able to, like, confront it. Like, I should be able to watch this, you know? I should have enough boundaries. But the movie itself, this is like a meta thing, because the movie itself is like a projection of very deep, dark, unconscious, subconscious material. So kind of that's the idea of Eraserhead. The idea of Eraserhead is it's like watching this movie is like watching a deep confrontation with deep, deep fear and guilt and anxiety, confusion, lostness, the oppressive dread of extreme existential terror, you know, like you see it on film. And people describe that as being cathartic. Mel Brooks, who saw this movie as part of hiring David Lynch to do The Elephant Man, Mel Brooks said when he saw this movie, he felt cleansed afterward. And I thought, that's interesting. That's interesting to me. So this is a long story to say that for me, yeah, I've also been going through this thing for the last few months of like confronting fear, right? And getting it out in front of you and actually looking at it. And so it got to the point where I was like, what's the thing that I'm most afraid of looking at? Like, what's the box I don't ever want to open? Eraserhead. So I had to watch it. So what I did, and I'm not saying you have to do this, because it's not that bad. It turns out it's not that bad, okay? It's just a movie. And it's kind of like funny, and it's kind of fun. It's not as horrible as I thought. What I did was I got up Eraserhead, and then I opened other YouTube tabs and stuff of like very comforting, happy material. And then I thought to myself, okay, this is going to sound ridiculous, but you don't understand like the psychological pressure that was around this movie for me as a child. I thought, okay, can I watch the opening credits? I'm going to watch the opening credits, and then I'm going to go watch, you know, something comforting on YouTube. It's like exposure therapy, you know? I'm afraid of elevators. Okay, I'm going to take one step toward the elevator, and I'm going to stop. That's it. That's all I have to do today. I don't have to get on the elevator. So that's what I did. I watched the opening credits, and then I watched that. And then I was like, okay, can I watch 3 minutes of this film? I watched 3 minutes, stopped, went and did something else, okay? And I did that, but pretty soon I was like, oh, I can hang with this. And then I kind of wanted to just watch it. So then I just sat down and watched all of it. And then I got to the end and I was like, oh, that was great. This movie is really great, okay? Let's just say that. Let's give David Lynch some credit. Now, if you're not familiar with David Lynch, I can't help you. I don't know what you're doing here, you know? David Lynch, who just passed away recently, he had emphysema, like real bad, because he was a smoker, lifelong smoker. And he was, I guess, like in his home, you know, had a nurse or something, you know, real bad emphysema. And when the wildfires happened in LA, he had to be moved. And I guess like the stress of that was, you know, sent him spiraling health-wise. That's how he died. Lynch was born in 1945. He's like a true boomer. He is like official boomer, all right? And he, you know, had this wonderful combination of like, he was completely a madman, completely surreal. If you see his paintings, it's like dark and bizarre and eerie and ugh. He was that, but he was also very wholesome. He had a very wholesome sensibility. I mean, basically, you know. And he had this kind of Midwestern, you know, Americana thing to him. And those two things together produced a great thing in him and great art. He grew up in the 50s, and he sort of, you know, he talked about that time growing up in the 50s, like every boomer will tell you, was just incredible. You know, it was just a great time to grow up as a kid. It was a high trust society. There was a lot of, everything felt new and like promising, you know, and they had these beautiful cars of that era and the clean streets and American, you know, Americana parades and all this stuff. It was a really great music, you know, great time to grow up. But also there was this kind of dark underside to it. And he describes one time when he was maybe 11 or 12 at night, being in some suburban neighborhood and encountering this woman. He was hanging out with friends or something, and this woman came out of the bushes. I love when David Lynch talks, he does this with his fingers. This beautiful, just so beautiful. Well, no, not this woman was beautiful. He said this woman came out of the bushes and she was completely naked, and she was like kind of out of her mind or like disoriented, and she was like battered. It was like a bad, dark situation, you know. And it had a huge impact on him as this, you know, having grown up in this sunlit, gleaming 1950s Americana, and then seeing this situation that he didn't know how to deal with. Like, he wanted to help this woman, he didn't know how. He didn't understand, you know, the kind of the level of like human suffering that suddenly like hit his consciousness when he came across this woman. It was just like a lot for him. And so all of his movies are kind of unpacking this. It's almost cliche and trite to talk about it. Like, oh yeah, David Lynch, he's talking about the dark, seedy underbelly behind the, you know, American facade of, you know, shiny, happy life. Yes, we know this, okay. So he made Eraserhead. Now, Eraserhead, his first film, David Lynch was a painter, okay? He was really thought of himself as a painter. He was a painter, and then he got into doing kind of like moving paintings where he would sort of paint something and then had a projector interacting with it on a loop. So you'd have some, you know, moving texture. And he did a couple things like that. And that he started getting the idea of making films. And he started making weird little stop motion films and stuff with his first wife. And he was taking, I don't know if he was ever enrolled in film school, but he would kind of like sit in on classes, and he kind of became involved in that world. And somehow, I don't remember the story, but he got involved with the AFI. This is in LA. Lynch was, by the way, was born in Missoula, Montana, and then grew up sort of in Virginia, and then somehow made it out to LA. Yeah, my research is spotty. Okay, all right, back off. All right. Sorry, I'm sorry. No, but he was in LA. He got involved with the AFI, the American Film Institute, which you probably have, you know, AFI is top 100 movies of the something. You know, AFI. He got involved with the AFI and somehow got this space. The AFI was in this giant mansion in Beverly Hills. Like, they had this 50-room mansion that somebody had gotten a hold of, and they had AFI had set up shop in this thing. And somehow David Lynch got a hold of this little kind of forgotten area of this mansion called the Stables, which I guess used to be the stables of the estate. And he had a few rooms and a whole bunch of gear from the AFI. And somehow he got a hold of this thing and made Eraserhead with a very small crew and like no money. And I'm guessing, so this would have been like 1973 to 76 or so. Wait, that's not enough time. I think it took about 5 years to make, so maybe 72 to 77. Most of the 70s, Lynch was making this film. All right, this is a guy he was like a student, a painter nobody'd ever heard of. And he had this absolute bare bones crew. Jack Nance is the guy who plays Henry, who is the Eraserhead, I guess. The guy with the hair. Jack Nance, a small cast. The Jack's wife, Mary, is actually played by the lady from Little House on the Prairie, funny enough. In fact, let me see if I can find a picture of her. You know what I'm talking about? The teacher. What's her name? Little House on the Prairie, which is so crazy. It's so appropriate that in the 70s, the face of the teacher on Little House on the Prairie at night would go and film Eraserhead, which is like the dark side. Little House on the Prairie teacher. What was her name? Charlotte Stewart. Let me see if I can share this tab. Da, 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 da. I'm gonna share this tab with you right now. Oh, will it not let me share tabs while I have a movie up? I guess I can't do more than one. That's dumb. Anyways, take my word for it. The teacher. That's Henry's wife in this movie. Anyways, tiny little crew, and they made this movie from most of the 70s. They're making this movie, and it took forever because they didn't have any money. And there's great stories about how the last year or so of this shoot, they even AFI stopped giving them film to shoot. So they would people would just stop by the film store on the way to shoot this thing and just pick up black and white film so they had something to shoot on. This movie was almost exclusively shot in the midnight hours after work and stuff, which I feel like gives it a vibe. That's definitely part of why this thing has vibe. Because all these people would work during the day and then they'd come make this thing at night. I'm talking about from midnight to 5 a.m. I'm talking about up all night in the middle of the night, living this alternate life with the small little crew making this absolutely nothing movie that nobody had ever heard of. And it became a real labor of love. And they all talk about it with really fond memories. And so I think, my impression of Eraserhead was I was expecting it to be very just horrible, dread, just a difficult movie to watch, and just that's it. But I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, first of all, it's a great movie. Just in terms of cinema, in terms of art, it's fantastic. But also it had a kind of a light in it. It wasn't just horrible and suffocating and dreadful. It was it is, but also right alongside it, there's this other energy. And it's so beautiful. It's beautiful. It's you get these ideas, and then more ideas come, and they make the idea even more beautiful. What was I saying? Yeah, it also has this kind of this sparkle in it. It has a very, it's not just horrible. There's something redemptive in it, and there's some kind of light quality in it. And I think part of that energetically comes through because the people who were making it were having such a good time making it, and they all really loved it, and they were putting a lot of good energy into it. But also David Lynch, this is important. David Lynch is not your run-of-the-mill postmodernist film director / artist / whatever, 20th century, whatever. David Lynch, in fact, there's a great interview where someone was like, do you consider yourself postmodern? Because your movies are so abstract and they have all this blah, 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 blah. And he was like, I don't know what that means. He didn't even know what she was talking about. And then because she asked him, your movies are so strange and so abstract, and you play with all these signs and symbols and blah, 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 but it's hard to call you postmodern because you seem to have an actual sense of good and evil as real things. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. He absolutely believes in good and evil, which is why his work is completely in a different realm than most of what was made in the 20th century. Because if you think of most filmmakers who were masters and dealt with the abstract and the surreal, like Kubrick, right? All those guys have a kind of dark heart universe ontology. You know, they kind of, it's like, here's some dark, uncomfortable stuff, and that's just what it is. That's how it is. You know, the universe is just, it's a meaningless black hole, you know. There's not a lot of redemption, you know, not a lot of good and evil. It's all plastic and elastic, and what's good and what's evil, it's all relative. Lynch has a clear idea about good and evil. And so in his movies, they're like 99% dark, like he's exploring the darkest stuff. But there's always this thread of redemptive light in there, you know? So in The Elephant Man, it's kind of like the guy's Elephant Man, what's his name? And what's the guy that the Elephant Man's based on? Anyways, at the end of that movie, he's kind of like going into the afterlife, and he's having visions of his mother's eyes and the stars, and there's this light, you know. There's this redemptive thread through it. That's what's interesting about this to me, is it's not just like darkness and there it is. It's like, no, we're pulling all this dark prima materia, right? In alchemical terms, you'd say this is like the nigredo. It's prima materia. You're just gathering the deepest, darkest shadow parts of the unconscious, the really dark stuff, bringing it all out in order to shine light on it, to confront it and dispel it. You know, Lynch was a big proponent of TM, Transcendental Meditation, which is like a whole nother topic. And so he was very into this idea of like cultivating the light, you know, the light of consciousness, awareness, or whatever, and that being the thing that dissipates the darkness. Because he laid out this worldview where he's like, darkness isn't real. You know, you think about the darkest darkness you can possibly imagine. One little ray of sun comes in and it's just gone. You know, so he expounded this worldview of that darkness isn't real. The light is what's real, which is a Christian worldview. That's the Orthodox Christian worldview. You know, evil has no substantial being, right? It's just like darkness. You know, all what really exists is the light and the sunlight, which is God. Excuse me, I have to take a snack break. Anyways, so yeah, he said, this is my most spiritual movie, but people don't see it. To me, right away, I knew exactly what this movie was. And I'm going to share it with you. We're going to do an analysis. And I was like, yeah, this is like literally the spiritual situation portrayed literally on film. And it's this alchemical thing of projecting the prima materia of the subconscious out into the external world, facing it, and thereby overcoming the false light energy traps of the draconian Anunnaki collective. Which, if you don't know what that is, I can't help you, man. You know what I'm saying? The draconians, man. The Jehovite collective, you know? The shadow beings that run the toll houses in the air. This guy, Henry, this movie is about him overcoming that and going back to heaven, right? And the key to understanding this for me was the lady in the radiator, okay? Now, the lady in the radiator, again, for me, was always an object of horror, you know, because I had seen like a second of the lady in the radiator's face. And if you don't know, the lady in the radiator is like a lady with a nice shiny white dress and, you know, curly hair and stuff. And she's got these like enlarged cheeks, right? She's got this like deformed cheek thing on her face. and she's very happy and like, ah, and it's like, oh, God, it's like very creepy, right? And I was always completely creeped out about this. And then I was watching an interview with Lynch where they were talking about his past work, and they were handing him Polaroids and, you know, stills from movie sets and stuff, and just projects he had worked on forever. And they would hand him a Polaroid and be like, you know, describe this. And they handed him one, and it was the lady in the radiator. And he was like, oh, beautiful, beautiful, so beautiful. And the interviewer was like, really? Why is she beautiful? And Lynch said, because she's so happy. And I got it. I was like, oh, it's about, you know, looking past the surfaces of things. Lynch was on this kind of anti-nominalist thing, or maybe this is nominalist. I'm going to have to think about the philosophy of this. About if you take the name away from something, a lot of times you have a totally different perception of it, and you see something that's beautiful that you might not have thought was beautiful if you had a label or a name on it. His example was like a pus, a sore, you know, a sore oozing pus, you know, which is like a horrible thing, you know. But he said if you saw a really up close picture of it and you didn't know what it was, and you just saw the kind of like swirling thing and patterns and stuff, you might think that's beautiful. It's only when you kind of have this name for it and this label that it changes your perception. But anyways, I got it. The lady in the radiator, it's like the horror about the lady in the radiator is purely superficial. Actually, she's meant to be this character who's like represents joy. Yes, she may be deformed, she may be frightening to behold or something, but like she represents joy. And I realized the lady in the radiator is the goddess of mercy. She is the white, you know, mother. And I was like, oh, I know what's happening here. So I was watching this movie, and then by understanding the lady in the radiator, I was like, I know what's happening. This guy is overcoming the energy trap of the draconian network. He's going into a loop of his life in which the prima materia is projected in front of him, and he's actually confronting it all. And by doing so, he's able to then overcome the false light traps of the energy vampire system and go back to heaven. So it's really a beautiful movie and redemptive. So what the hell am I talking about? Let's try to watch some of this. I don't know if I can, like, if I'm going to get away with this or they're going to shut me down or what. But what the hell? Let's give it a shot. So right off the bat, let's see this. All right, the first shot is Henry is like laying down. He's in space or something. And there's this dead planet rock thing in his head. And he looks very anxious and worried. Okay. Now, for me, I know exactly what that is. Do you know what that is? I know what that is. If you don't know what that is, it's hard for me to explain. You know, the dead planet. It's the Death Star. And what's crazy is, in a couple seconds here, we get a shot that's like, we go into this thing, and we're getting closer and closer, and we like go into it. Like, and it's literally a Death Star shot. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, there's the creepy guy. But trigger warning, this movie is super creepy. So if you're going to get super creeped out, you need to get out of here, okay? This movie is about facing some really dark subconscious stuff, and it's not easy or pleasant. It is in the long run. I got to say also about this movie, like, yeah, I was expecting it to have this sort of suffocating dread and just horror thing to it. And I was surprised at how much it had this kind of light and sparkle in it. And it also has this almost like sci-fi kind of zing, pow, zoom thing in it. It's very sci-fi and very cool. So let me see if I can find this shot. Did we miss it? Oh, we missed it. Yeah, literally right here, we get into this thing, and there's a Death Star shot. This is just like the dang trench on the Death Star scene. And this movie came out in 1977, the same year as Star Wars. How crazy is that? This is another movie about the Death Star. Now, if you don't know what that represents, I don't know how to explain it to you. It's the dead planet formed in the mind of the Western man because of the enframing and two-point linear perspective. Duh. Obviously. It's the dead planet formed in the mind of the Western man by Cartesian epistemology. Okay, let's look at it like this. You know, we're all about overcoming the Cartesian epistemology on this channel. That's what we're doing, right? We're trying to get back to like a Rosicrucian kind of worldview, right? We're trying to get back to the dream of Astrea. We're trying to get back to an orthodox medieval world in which the distinction between self and world is not impermeable, right? We're trying to break down the Cartesian wall here, right? Because this is the root of a lot of our existential problems and the destruction of the natural environment that we find ourselves facing. We're trying to break this down. We're trying to get back to a Rosicrucian, alchemical kind of worldview. So part of that is, you know, the contents of your psyche. The way alchemy worked is that the contents of your psyche were also sort of projected on external processes in the world, right? There was not this Cartesian dualism. There was not this self as spectator, wall, world as spectacle thing that arose around the 30 Years' War, right? Now, prior to the domination of Descartes and the solidification of the scientific materialist worldview, there was this whole other thing that was going on in Europe. Europe could have gone this whole other way with the way of seeing, right? And this was part of the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation was a splitting point, right? There was a part of the Reformation that was going to lean into this Cartesian dualism and become the handmaiden of scientific materialism, which is what happened. But there was this other edge of the Protestant Reformation that was Rosicrucian and alchemical that had a whole different slant on things, that had a whole different epistemological relationship with the world. So if you haven't seen my stream on Romanician's Technology, Symptom, and Dream, you should go watch that. You'll know what the hell I'm talking about. Otherwise, you're not. Or maybe you do. Great. Anyway, so I see this thing, and I'm like, oh, that's the dead planet. That's the Death Star. That's the thing. That's the thing. I know what that is. Now he's got the thing. And so this is either he's like between life loops, or he's in the dream state, or he's outside of time, or he's in the spirit world, or he's dead, or, you know, he's about to be reincarnated or something. And in the dead planet lives this character, this guy. And I see this guy, and I'm like, I feel like I know who this guy is. This is the sickle man who lives inside the dead planet. I know what this is from my dreams and from my own alchemical fantasies and projections. Now, dude, he's got this set of levers. All right. He's sitting here by this cracked window, which is the cracked worldview of the Western man. He's sitting here, and he's all scarified all over his body. This guy is a Metatronic agent. Okay? This is one of the... Now, if you're familiar with Ashiana Dean, you know how the Metatronic system works. Okay, we live on this planet. We live on this fallen plane, Earth, fallen Earth, right? And when we die, and our soul tries to ascend back up to heaven, there's all these shadow vampire energy suck beings, which in the Orthodox tradition is represented by the toll houses, who will try to stop you from ascending by trying to trigger your fear, trying to trigger your guilt, try to trigger your shame, etc., etc. They'll yell at you about your sins and how terrible you are, blah, blah, blah. They're trying to trigger you so you fall back down. Or in Ashayana's system, you get trapped in false light traps that aren't the real light. It's like a fake light that tricks you into going back down, either to be reincarnated and recycled back in this fallen world, which you don't want, or in the Orthodox tradition to go down for damnation or whatever. Now, I'm not going to make a comment on which one you want to pick. You pick whichever one you want. For the purposes of this movie, though, we got to stick with reincarnation because I think that's what's happening here. And I know if you're Orthodox, you'd be like, but reincarnation's not a thing. That's heresy. Well, says who? You know, says who? I ask you. Anywho, so this guy is a Metatronic agent. He's like living in a toll house, you know. So this must be in between Henry's life loops or something. And he's pulling these levers to mess with Henry, right? To send him into another false light trap and make him replay, stuck in this energy suck vampire system thing, which is where we live, right? So that's what's going on here. Like, obviously that's what I always see this and I'm like, oh, this guy's a Metatronic agent, you know? But here's where it gets really interesting. He's pulling some levers, and this thing happens to Henry right here. He opens his mouth, and out of his mouth comes this thing. By the way, these things, which there are a lot of in the movie, they're umbilical cords, and they're real. Catherine, what's her name? The assistant on this thing. I can't remember her name. I can't remember. She would go to the hospital and just like ask the nurses, be like, can we have some more umbilical cords? And they would just give her umbilical cords because it's the 70s and I guess you can just do that, you know? So these are real umbilical cords in the movie, which is kind of weird, but, you know, for art, I guess, you know. Anyways, this thing comes out of his mouth. That's the parasite. That's the thing. That's the thing that possesses you. That's the thing. So now I haven't quite worked out the details of this, which with Eraserhead, you don't want to get too hung up on the details. But this Metatronic agent is there trying to trap Henry into a false light trap. But somehow what ends up happening is Henry's parasite is pulled out of him, right? So my theory of this movie is now Henry goes on, he gets pulled into a false light trap, which is right here. Right there. Kind of looks like the James Bond intro. I hope you guys can hear this soundtrack. The sound design on this movie is like, it's incredible. And it's what makes this movie, really. It's like another character. It's more than that. It's like the sound design on this thing is the film. Without the sound design, it would not work, I don't think. So his soul is pulled into this alternate false light trap. Here it comes. He's going into it. He thinks he's going to heaven, but he's not. What happened is he is back. He's back. Now he's going to replay his life, right? In the fallen Earth matrix, okay? But his parasite was pulled out of him. Okay? So somehow, like, I don't know what's happening because Metatronic guy pulls a lever and the parasite comes out. So I don't know if Metatron guy is like responsible for accidentally pulling his parasite out, right? So my theory of this movie is Henry is now going to go through his life loop again, but this time he's going to do it alchemically, where all of his fear, guilt, shame, all those things are going to be projected out in front of him, and he's going to actually like see it all and confront it all, confront all of his fear, all of his guilt, all of his shame, fully experience it and be purged of it. So now at the end of the movie, he actually gets to heaven, right? And he's going to be guided there by the goddess of mercy, who is the lady in the radiator. And she greets him on the shores of heaven. Okay, so now Henry's going through his life loop again. But this time, like I said, all of his darkness, all of his fear, his guilt, all of that is going to be visible and experienced by him. So now we can just watch this and just appreciate it. This movie is beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's just beautiful. You know, this is the kind of thing where, you know, if you don't have an eye for it, you take for granted. But just look at this shot and look at the decision to pick this exact portion of this location. And this is incredible. Maybe I should make this bigger so we can actually, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. This is cinema right here. This isn't just a movie, this is art. Now here's I got to make a comment about this too. Lynch, this was the first thing he ever did, okay? As a nobody, as a student with no money. There was no money for this production. AFI gave him some incredibly ridiculously small amount of money, but he was able to pay his crew, which he insisted on. It was very important to him. Somehow he managed to pay everyone on the crew like $5 a week or something ridiculous, you know, but like he wanted to make sure that he paid them all because Dave, you know, he's a Midwest boomer, you know, who has internalized the American value system. But the point is, you know, this movie is just masterfully shot, you know, and Lynch would have been hands-on making all the stuff, you know, that he wasn't content to just like tell an art department what to do. Like he's going to be building all these sets himself as pieces, as art pieces, as little art pieces. The editing, I just to catch that last shot, just the editing of like how long to linger after Henry has left the frame. These kind of details are just so masterful in this film. They're just beautiful. The sound design, how it comes in and out of the frame. This would have been something they built, you know. So now, like I said, Henry is just, he's seeing all the darkness in his environment, right? Alchemically, all his prima materia is out there in front of him. He's experiencing it directly. It's not buried. So there's a lot of this dark, you know, industrial wasteland, factories kind of world. This is Henry's apartment now. Okay, so Henry gets to his apartment. And we're going to have to cut to the chase here a little bit. He's in this elevator. That's his apartment. Now, okay, here's the lady across the hall. The lady across the hall represents all of his guilt about sexuality, right? And sexual desire, right? She's this sort of temptress figure, you know, extremely seductive energy. And he's like totally freaked out by her. What's interesting is Henry's apartment is 26. And my interpretation of this is, you know, 26 is the age at which you basically like your brain is done cooking. And you start to, your brain is kind of developed, fixed up, and you start to lose your neuroplasticity. So in a sense, all of us are like 26. We're all like basically trapped at 26. You know, unless you do your meditation properly and you cultivate your neuroplasticity and you, et cetera, et cetera. But basically, most people are just looping 26. Now, she lives at 27, which is a whole nother story. But I just thought that was interesting. Okay, so now he comes in his house. Okay, see how there's like hay or something stacked up on the dresser behind him? This shit is everywhere. Okay? It's all over his floor. It's all over. This is the prima materia. This is the negredo. This is the black compost and doo-doo of the psyche projected out into the environment. It's just there. So there's a lot of this kind of thing. Listen to that sound design. Isn't that great? There's the radiator. Now we can't like watch long clips of this because I don't want to get like dinged. But I just, again, it's like the mastery of this filmmaking in terms of the editing, the camera work, the lighting, everything about this is so mwah. It is crazy that this was dude's first movie, right? And indeed, like when they were making this movie, they had no expectation that this was going to be like actually a legit movie. They all kind of thought that nobody was ever going to see this thing. This became a labor of love for this small crew of people over the course of 5 years. They didn't ever think this was going to find an audience. I think Lynch had the idea that this movie would be shown once. You know, and that'd probably be it. And indeed, what happened was they finished the movie and AFI set up like a premiere. They set up this event and they were going to do a midnight showing of this at the Institute, I guess. And they marketed it as like, just come to this event. They didn't say anything about the movie. They were like, just come. This movie's going to blow your mind. It'll be an experience you'll never forget. But there was no information about it at all. They kind of played up the mystery. Which is like, you know, what are you going to say about Eraserhead? There's no talking about it. There's no explaining it. You know, one of my things about this movie, remember I said I had the VHS in my house? One time I read the back. I read the description on the back, you know, because I had this, again, like I had this horror of this movie, but also this curiosity about it, this sick curiosity. And I read the back jacket one time, and you know how the back of a VHS, it gives you like a plot synopsis? Well, a plot synopsis for Eraserhead is kind of a ridiculous project to attempt, right? But, you know, they have to put it on there. So it was like a man and his wife have a baby, but turns out the baby is a monster. They used the word monster, right, to describe the baby. And so he's having to take care of this monster baby in this nightmare world that he inhabits. Now, to me, that sounds just horrible. Like, I don't want anything to do with this movie. But I had imagined all kind of stuff in my head about this monster baby, you know, projecting my own fears about it. Now, when I hear the word monster, I think of something that has nothing but, you know, hostility and is destructive and delights in harming people. You know, so just something horrible, right? So I had thought of the baby in this way. And monster, I'm thinking insectoid. I'm thinking, you know, this baby has like insect claws or something. I think I got this from Batman Returns. Remember in the second Tim Burton Batman, the opening thing is the penguin is born, you know, and you hear the mother in labor pain, and then the doctor comes out and he's like throwing up, you know, and it's like, oh no, something horrible is in there. And it's the penguin, and indeed he is a monster. Like he's just like this, you know, horrible little demon child. And the only thing you see are these black flipper hand things. So I think I might have imported that into my conception of this monster baby described on the back of the Eraserhead jacket. So I thought of just this horrible, evil, nasty creature with insectile-like appendages. And that's not it at all. The baby in this thing, which we'll have to talk about, even though David Lynch never talked about the baby. He refused to talk about the baby. To me, the baby was an object of, like, compassion. What was most surprising to me about this movie is I expected just suffocating dread and horror with no redemption. But what I found was a real heart for these characters and a compassion for these characters and what in the world they live in and what they're going through. You know, like Mary is like, man, she's living in hell. Like, she is hysterical, anxious, on the verge of nervous breakdown perpetually. She's angry. She can't handle anything. You know, she has all these like weird neurotic habits. She's very unhappy. But, you know, I like felt for her. Because then you meet her parents when you meet her, and it's like, well, oh, poor Mary, you know, like she doesn't have the help she needs. And neither do her parents. You know, my feeling about this is like, yes, this movie is portraying the world of fallen Earth at its worst. But it's like these poor people, you know, you got to you just have compassion for these people in this situation. You know, they don't have the help they need. And Henry gets the help he needs from the Theotokos, who I think is the lady represented by the lady in the radiator. Anyways, so, okay, we should probably skip ahead here. So Henry, you know, he hears that Mary's invited him over for dinner. He goes to Mary's house. Now, Mary's house is, to me, this is like, it's funny because, okay, the movie's made in the 70s, but you can't tell the way it's shot and the way it's lit. It's very reminiscent of like mid-century television, like Twilight Zone kind of thing, or like Andy Griffith or Leave It to Beaver. To me, this whole scene at Mary's house is like a really horrible episode of Andy Griffith. But it, you know, it's kind of got this bizarre sense of humor about it. Now he goes in the house and just listen and watch this. You can hear this thing. It's like, and we don't know what it is. But I think it's literally the sound of this anxious environment. Because again, like he's experiencing all this externally. Like he can literally hear the anxiety. This whole thing is, you know, the anxiety of being a young person getting married, the anxiety of, you know, meeting your in-laws and the pressure about the whole situation and blah, blah, blah. That's what this is all about. Now, later we find out what the source of this sound is. It's dogs. But listen to the sound design here. Because I'm trying to figure out what this is. I think they must have made it. It sounds like they made it with like tape. It sounds like something taped and then sped up really fast. And so it sounds like the, you know. But it sounds like, it just feels like worms or something, you know. But just great sound design. So yeah, now to me the most horrifying part of the movie is the dinner scene where they have these little chickens and the chicken's alive and it's bleeding and stuff. But you know, there's an element to this where it's like, yes, it's horrible, it's nightmarish, blah blah blah. But there's also this like weird family glow underneath it all. You know, like these two old, this is Mary's mother and grandmother, presumably. You know, and she's kind of taking care of her. Like, it's kind of sweet, you know. There's some kind of bizarre sweetness under all this dread. It's just like life. Just like life, you know. So, anyways, Henry is cornered by his mother-in-law. who is like, ooh, you feel that sound design? Isn't that good? She's like, did you and Mary do it? Like, imagine being grilled by your stepmother. It's like the most uncomfortable thing you can imagine. But it is like, it's a projection of like the most anxious things, you know, you have in your subconscious as a young man getting involved with a wife and her family. Henry's experiencing all this directly. It's not just in his head. He's like living it. Here's Mary being all crazy. Mary's crazy. So anyways, so then now they get married, and because Mary's mother tells him there's a baby. There's a baby. This is the famous baby. So now Henry knows he's a father, and him and Mary are going to have to get married. So she moves into his apartment, and then the next scene, Mary's taking care of the baby. Now again, I had imagined this horrible insectile evil creature. The baby is like this, yes, very strangely deformed thing, but it's like sweet, you know? And Mary's, you know, trying to feed it and blah, blah, blah. You know, and again, it's like, it's very like Elephant Man, you know? Yes, the Elephant Man is horribly deformed, but you feel like compassion for him. And again, this baby is like, it's all messed up, but you know, you feel like, aw, little guy. And indeed, here's what's really interesting about this. Henry comes home. There's the baby. Henry comes home and let me see if I can catch it. Henry comes home and come on, let's get to it. Mary's struggling. Henry comes in. Hold on, let me just get. Oh, he goes out. Okay, here's another thing. Henry is out on the street, and he gets this little thing out of his pocket. And what is it? What is it? What has he got? What has he got? What has he got? What do you have, Henry? It's this little worm. What is that? You know what that is. You know what that is. That is the Agenbite. It's the secret. It's the thing that, you know, that men will do in a pressurized situation is just have some little secret thing to themselves. Maybe not just men. Everybody does it. But I'm thinking about men because I am a man, and I'm thinking about my own psychology. Being a young, newly married man, whatever. It's the secret. It's this just thing you want to keep for yourself, so you have some sense that there's some little bit of life that's just for you, and nobody knows about it. You know. Now, the obvious example is pornography. Pornography is like the big example of it, but it can take the form of all kind of just like, it doesn't have to be so extreme. It can be any kind of little secret you keep for yourself. It's this little worm. It's like in Ulysses, in James Joyce's Ulysses, you know, Bloom. This made me think of Bloom. How Bloom's going around town, and he's got this secret correspondence with some woman, and he's got the letter, this, you know, letter she wrote him, and he kind of keeps it with him. Now, Bloom's a married man and blah, 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 but he's got this secret, you know, this sweet little secret that makes him feel like he's got his own little life. And indeed, Bloom, like, his whole kind of inner world is full of, like, secrets or, you know, ideas, schemes, plans, all this kind of stuff that nobody really knows about. And then the funny thing is, in the last chapter of Ulysses, which is his wife, from her point of view, after he comes home, it's like inside her head, and like she knows all of his secrets. It's like he's not actually keeping any secrets. But anyways, Henry's got this little worm. It's his little secret. Now, if I can get to the thing where he comes back in, Henry comes in. Come on. Come on, movie. I'll have all day. Henry comes in. Baby's crying. Henry comes in. What does he do? Oh, look at that smile. Like, to me, that's heartwarming. You know, as like a dad, it's like Henry, his baby's this deformed, weird thing, but he's still like, he walks in the door and he gives a little like smile of joy. You know, that's his little boy. That is so sweet. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. And so again, it's when Henry, we see this, you know, Henry's living in this world where all of his inner nightmares are projected outside and he's experiencing them and living through them and confronting them. But even so, he still is smiling at his deformed little boy. You know, that there's something about Henry's heart that is coming through and cutting through. And this is when he sees the lady in the radiator. The radiator starts to glow. It's like something in Henry's heart starting to glow. The radiator starts to glow. There's a presence there. And then later we find out that's where the goddess of mercy lives. Again, here's this like hay compost all over the place. But the radiator starts to glow. All right. Now Mary can't handle any of this. Mary's losing it, man. She's just mad. She's frustrated at this baby. He won't shut up. She's losing her temper. And the crazy thing about this is Henry's handling all this pretty well. Which I think the end of this movie is Henry gets to go to heaven. So in this, I think what's happening here is like Henry is navigating all this nightmare world of all his inner darkness projected outside. And he's kind of like, okay. He's smiling at the baby, even though the baby's deformed. His wife is absolutely flipping out and losing it. And he's like pretty cool about it. You know, like he makes one kind of comment to her, like, why don't you just, you know, get out or something. But he doesn't lose his temper. Henry never loses his temper. You know, he's kind of like in it. He's in it. This is a great scene where Mary she's about to leave. And she goes to the bed, and we don't know what she's doing. She just starts pulling on this bed. And this goes on and on and on for minutes. And the actress, I watched an interview with the actress, and she was like, yeah, Lynch was shooting this thing, and he said, now just go to the bed and just start pulling. And keep going until I tell you. And so she's just pulling and pulling and pulling. And she thought this is like going way too far. But then you see in the movie, you're like, oh man, this scene works beautifully. And I think what's happening here is his wife is trying to trigger him. This whole thing about Henry's being tested. And he's trying to be triggered. Because when you die and you try to ascend the toll houses, essentially they try to trigger you. Any fear, guilt, shame, whatever you've got still in you, they can trigger you, and then your soul's going to go back down. But he's now going through the worst possible nightmare, bleak situation. And he's like not being triggered by it. Like he's not mad about the baby. And his wife, who's completely freaking out and hysterical, she's trying everything she can do to make him miserable too. And he's just like not reacting. So I think this is her trying to see, she's reaching into like the lower chakra plane and she's trying to pull his triggers and it's not working. So anyways, now Henry's alone with the baby and he just takes care of the baby. And it's sweet, man. Yeah, the baby's a monster, but like this is sweet to me as a dad. You know? Henry's like, the baby's sick and it's horrifying, but Henry's just like, "Aw, you're not feeling good, are you?" See, there's the baby all sick and bleh. And there's beautiful stuff in here. So beautiful. There's this great scene, if I can catch it. See the humidifier? There's this great shot of just like the side of the humidifier where you see the bubbles bubbling. And it's that kind of stuff that just makes this movie just fantastic. The baby's all sick. Okay, now finally we get to the lady in the radiator. So I think Henry is like, because of his enduring the prima materia nigredo, and his heart has started to glow, now he actually encounters her. And she's doing her little dance. This is what's cool about her. Now she's doing her little dance. This is her. See, she's got these cheeks. And she looks kind of creepy. But don't be fooled by the appearance. It's only because we're looking through a glass darkly. Okay, we're in this fallen world looking through a glass darkly. You know, and he's not, he's still seeing the patina of muck and dross and nigredo all over everything. But he's kind of seeing the goddess of mercy behind that. And the kind of glow of her love is underneath all that. And you can kind of see it in her eyes. And her joy. And her hopes for him. She's here to help him. Now she's doing this little dance. And you'll start to see these things falling. I know that this is the Theotokos because she's able to just destroy these demons. These little parasite demons start falling, and she just with the joy of a little schoolgirl, just like stamping on them, you know, like and she's destroying these demons, and they're all coming out of Henry, and she's like destroying them. See, they're all dropping. They're dropping, and then she's just like... She's just like... She's gonna just start crushing them. Like it's a game to her, you know? It's so beautiful. It's beautiful. So anyways, that's the lady in the radiator. So now Henry's on track, you know. Now his wife's back. She's all freaking out. More of this. Now there's this cool segment where the worm that he keeps secret, his secret worm that he keeps going back to when the wife's asleep. You know what I'm saying? It finally comes out and does this whole like little dance thing. And then it like opens its mouth wide and it's like, bruh. Anyways, that's okay because radiator lady can destroy all this stuff. Okay, so now the wife, I guess, goes back to her parents, and now Henry has this encounter with his like sexual guilt, you know, who is this lady, and this is a absolutely beautiful shot right here. See how dark it is? You know, we're deep in Henry's nigredo right now. Okay, we're doing our shadow work up in here. Now she comes. Oh, I missed it. Let me see if I can catch it. He kind of comes out, and it's almost like we're not even in the apartment anymore. We're in some kind of like other astral realm of some kind. And she comes out of this pitch dark shot. And it's just a great shot. Check this out. Unbelievable. And he backs off. And this actress is just doing a great job. Like the energy that she's tapping into in this thing is just so good. She's kind of like, it's like she's threatening, but also completely, she's like threatening, but also gentle. It's like total It's like I don't know how to describe it, but it's great. And she maintains this energy throughout all these shots. But she too is a lost soul. And you also have compassion for her because once she actually gets with Henry, she sees his dark planet and stuff, and she's like horrified because this is another woman. We got to talk about the woman thing, okay? Lynch is like the only Hollywood person to really portray the plight of women or the feminine in the society as a whole and in Hollywood. Mulholland Drive is the obvious example, which is Mulholland Drive is a big budget Hollywood movie that is about the dark demonic evil powers exploiting women in Hollywood through, the Harvey Weinsteins and people like that of the world. Jeffrey Epstein's and Harvey Weinstein's and all those people. And this thing about Lynch is always showing the kind of nightmare world we live in. And in particular in this movie, which is his kind of, original statement, is this world, this Cartesian dualistic world and energy vampire suck system world that we live in. And the number one victims of this are women, because it's like men doing this. It's a male kind of ontology and a male epistemological attitude that has created this world. And women are just along for the ride. Like there's not much they can do about it, So, but there's this great thing. I think like Mary's mother and grandmother and the kind of solidarity between them is the solidarity between these two older women who have had to live and deal with this horrible nightmare men's world their whole lives. And they've just, what are they going to do about it except help each other and light cigarettes for each other and stuff. And so the women are always sympathetic figures in Lynch's stuff. I mean, all of his work is about violence toward women and exploitation of women. I mean, Laura Palmer. The whole thing about Twin Peaks is that, who killed Laura Palmer? And it wasn't just, I won't tell you who, just in case you've never seen it, but it wasn't just that guy who killed Laura Palmer. It's Laura Palmer. It's like this spirit, this kind of like spirit of corrupt and evil masculinity that killed Laura Palmer, that manifests itself as all these kind of darknesses in Twin Peaks and in Mulholland Drive and in like all of Lynch's movies. So even this woman too, who like you could say like, oh, well, she's like bad because she's like seducing Henry. Well, this woman is like also had to deal with living in this nightmare world, and she's dealt with it by, making some kind of pact with sexuality. That's the only way she knows how to navigate it. And indeed, but she's like, we're shown that she is aware of the horror in these men. And she's like, terrified. But the eyes, like the eyes in this performance, just, man, great performance. So anyways, she seduces Henry, and there's this great shot where they're disappearing into this milky bathtub scene. This was shot at a place in the stables where they had set up in the garage. And see, they're in this milky pool. And I guess it was winter and they were freezing. This is ice cold water they're in. And one of the crew kept going and get boiling water and trying to pour it in. But it didn't, it was like, there was no point. They're freezing. So anyways, she seduces Henry, but then she gets in there with him and they disappear into this pool, and it's a really cool shot. But then she sees she's confronted. She sees what's going on with Henry, and she sees the dead planet inside of him. and presumably the Metatronic energy that surrounds it. So then we finally get to, I think this is the duck's eye scene of the movie. Now, what do I mean by the duck's eye scene? So if you're familiar with Lynch, Lynch talked about the eye of the duck. It's so beautiful. So he said, if you look at a duck, you know, the duck has a bill. You think about the duck's bill, okay? And the bill has a certain texture to it, and a color, and a shape. And the bill is, you know, it's sort of shiny and smooth and hard, and it has these little, you know, textural things in it, you know, and it's a certain color. It's kind of an orange color, orange yellow color. It has a certain shape, right? You think of the bill, and then the rest of the duck is very different. It's this kind of puff, a blur of white, you know. And then there's this S curve of the neck into the body and the puff, and then it's got its feet, right? And this is sort of the construction of the duck, but the whole thing about the duck is the eye of the duck. The eye of the duck is set right in the head, and it's this jewel. It's like this glittering jewel. It's totally different than the bill and the body of the duck. It's this jewel of life, and it's this iridescent thing, you know, this beautiful thing, and that's really where the duck shines through. And he said, but the thing is, it's got to be right there where it's placed in the head. If the eye of the duck was on the bill, it wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't be it wouldn't have its space to be highlighted, you know, or if it was too close to the bill, say. No, it's got its distance from the bill, right? And it's in there, but it's also like it wouldn't make any sense on the feet, or, you know, like it's sort of perfectly positioned there in the eye. And he said every film has a scene like that. And for me, presumably every novel, every great work of music, every painting, every work of art has the eye of the duck. So it made me think, like, what's the eye of the duck scene in all of his movies? I think this bit here, this sequence, is the eye of the duck. The radiator lady comes out and sings him this song about heaven. I'll probably definitely get dinged if I play this. In heaven, everything is fine. So she's singing to him in the midst of his, you know, darkest fear, guilt, things, you know. She's still with him, and she's trying to help him, and now she's comforting him. She's singing, in heaven, everything is fine. In heaven, everything is fine. You've got your good things, and I've got mine. And then she also says, in heaven, everything is fine. You've got your good things, and you've got mine. Which is interesting, because it's like, in heaven, I guess the idea is like, there's enough boundaries to where you feel like you have what you need for yourself. But it's also, everything is shared. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. So she's singing him this song, telling him about heaven. She's calling him. She's beckoning him, you know? So, and I think this song is really cool. It's very rock and roll. It's like organ and vocal. That's it. Now, the only music in this movie is just some very sparse, quiet organ music that sounds like just nightmare 1930s ballroom, you know. I can't do it right, but it's like creepy. It's like haunted 1930s ballroom organ music. And it's only on in Henry's apartment sometimes. And then here in the duck's eye of the movie, we get this great song that's totally rock and roll. It's like, oh, we're not in the 30s. Now it's like, oh, this is the late 70s. It's now. Great song. In heaven, everything is fine. Super rock and roll. Very cool. She's singing to him and telling him this stuff. She's comforting him, you see. Now he comes and he actually meets her. This is the duck's eye of the movie right here. This whole crazy thing happens now, where he actually goes to her and she holds her hands out to him like she's beckoning him. She's like, please, come home. Please come with me. And there's this flash of white. And when he takes her hand, there's this flash of white. And what happens? He sees the Metatronic guy. He can see him. Right here. Oh, I must have missed it. It's only for like a second. So right here, maybe. Bam. Yeah, he sees the guy. See, these demons, they work by hiding, right? They work by tricking you. If you could actually see the demons, you would like straighten right out, But like I said, this whole thing is Henry's actually confronting, and like all this stuff in him is being made visible. And once he takes her hand, he actually sees the Metatronic demon guy who's been controlling his life loops and keeping him trapped in the energy suck system. And as soon as this happened, this whole crazy trip unfolds. This tree comes out, which I don't know. It's tree of life. Henry's, is this his what's it called? The grid, Catharba grid or whatever. I don't know, but Henry, look, he's like ringing. He's like freaking out. He's wringing his hands on this thing, and then his head pops off. So Henry is decapitated. There's his head. Boom. Now, what is this? In alchemy, this is the decapitation of the king, which marks the beginning of the albedo stage, the whitening, right? This is classic alchemical lore right here, right? You have the king's head, the king's decapitation, and then the king's bath. And then this process of albedo starts, where the dross and the muck and the shit of the negredo starts to be cleansed and washed and scrubbed, and there begins to be separation and then combination, and you get to the mud and the crap starts to be separated out and washed away, and then the good stuff recombined into a new essence. So this whole trip happens where his head cut off and then it falls out, and then the baby's head comes out. Now, the baby's head coming out of Henry's head, this to me is interesting, because I think what it is like the baby is working on many levels. On one level, the baby represents, yes, like Henry's fatherhood, and it's like just at face value, it's his baby, and like I said, he's, even though the baby is horrible or whatever, Henry still loves this child and is taking care of it. On that level, it's just about fatherhood. And especially being a new father. But I think here the baby is like Henry's inner child, right? He's now gone through this king's beheading, the king's decapitation, this encounter with the Theotokos, this whole, seeing the Metatronic agent, all this stuff is going on. His head's cut off, and I think he's now releasing the cry of the inner child. And I think this is when the redemption arc is truly like unfolding for him. Now what happens is his head is found by this boy who brings it to a shop. With these guys, blah, 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 blah. And he takes it into this room with these guys. And who is this? See that guy sitting right there? Do you know who that is? That is Ted Theodore Logan's father in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. That's Ted's dad, who wants to send him to Alaskan military school. And if you know me and my channel and my analysis, you know that to me, in my world, every actor is like, how do I say this? every part that an actor plays is like one. They're all the same person. Like Brad Pitt. If you've ever seen Brad Pitt movies, they're all the same person. So like the guy in Meet Joe Black is also the guy in Fight Club in like different dream manifestations, right? That's how the actor thing works. So this is actually Ted's dad. Now you go figure how this all works, but I'm just telling you the facts, okay? But the whole thing about this is, okay, they're in this place. What is it? It's some kind of pencil factory. And dude brings in this head, and Ted's dad gets this drill out and removes the pencil from Henry's head. Presumably this is where the ERASERHEAD thing comes from. Takes the pencil out of his head, puts it in this machine to check it. And he's checking to see if it's okay. So this machine goes, now here's where it gets nuts. See this? See this right here? Watch these pencils. I know what this is. I know what this is. Don't you know what that is? See that? See how the pencils, there's 2 rows of them. Let's take a look here. Let's take a closer look. There's 2 rows of these pencils. Okay, that pencil is moving to the left, that row of pencils. And then this row of pencils is moving against it in the other direction. Now, if you've ever opened your third eye, even partially, you've seen this before. This is where I get weird in the stream. This is the part where you can run if you want. But if you've ever seen this thing, you've seen this thing that looks like, you've seen these things that look like, you know, kind of like this kind of thing. You see these like spinning wheel things, right? Like that. Can you see that, or is it too glary? You see these spinny wheel things, right? And you might see 2 of them spinning against each other. Like one is spinning that way, you know, and another is spinning this way. And they're like spinning against each other. It's a terrible drawing, but you get the point. This is the Merkaba spin from Ashiana Dean's thing, dude. That's the Merkaba spin. What's happening here? Henry is getting his Merkaba spin fixed by all this craziness he's going through, right? He's in this life loop where he's had the parasite pulled out of him. And now he's going to have an alchemical journey where all of his prima materia is now projected out into the world, and he's going to experience it. And as he does, he experiences it, he confronts it, and he kind of keeps it together. And he's keeping it together, and he's even like opening his heart, even in the midst of this nightmare in front of him. He's like, he's getting it. He's fixing himself. This is the spiritual life. So when David Lynch said, "This is my most spiritual film," this is literally the spiritual life. So he meets the goddess of mercy, and she's helping him and encouraging him, and he's starting to wake up. He goes to her, he encounters her, he embraces her, he sees the Metatronic agent in front of him, he sees what's going on, and now his head's cut off. He's in the albedo process. His head gets checked by this guy, who's presumably some other spirit helper in the spirit world. This guy checks his Merkaba spin, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, his Merkaba spin works. It's all functioning correctly. That means he's going to be able to go to heaven. He's going to be able to get past the toll houses and get back to heaven." That's Merkaba spin right there. Those are the wheels that you see in your third eye. Some of you guys have no idea what I'm talking about right now. I've gone off. All right, this is ERASERHEAD, man. This is the weird stream. Okay. So he's like, "Yep, checks out." It's okay. Okay, so now Henry wakes back up. Listen, man, he's fixed. He's fixed. He's going to heaven. Now the baby. Now, what I haven't quite figured out here. Now the baby starts laughing at him, and I'm not really sure what's going on with the baby laughing at him. But the baby's laughing at him. And then it gets crazy here. At the end, what happens is, okay, he sees the woman, and she's brought home some other dude. And she sees Henry, and he's actually got his baby head. Anyways, I think we basically got this thing. This is all just denouement here. We've seen the duck's eye. So now Henry, the end of this movie is Henry finally cuts open the baby. Now, again, the baby exists on many different levels. So in the first part, the baby just represents early fatherhood, right? And the fears and the anxieties, blah, blah, blah. Then I think when the baby head comes out of Henry later, the baby is like Henry's cry of his own inner child, something like that. Now, I'm not quite sure what's going on here because the baby is laughing at him. The baby has become a mocking figure. And Henry finally has decided he's going to just take a look. He cuts open the swaddling on this baby, and the baby's freaking out. The baby's freaking out. He cuts open the swaddling, and it opens up, and it's like the baby's insides. And hey, I trigger warned you at the beginning of the stream. I told you you're going to see some crazy stuff, all right? And then he pierces the heart of this thing. Now, this is where it gets to like, it's hard for me to give my analysis of it because like I can't quite articulate it. And it's also like I don't fully understand it, right? But somehow he's gone right into the heart of, maybe this is Henry's inner child represented by like, you know, the bad part, the shadow of the inner child, which is like the spoiled part of us, the frightened part of us, something like that. And Henry's finally just going for it. Or maybe this thing he's poking, actually I think what this is this thing that he's poking is the callus on the heart, right? We all have this callus on our heart from our fears and from our traumas and from our things that we went through as kids. We have this protective callus layer. I think that's what this is actually. And Henry finally is like, he's going for it. He's just going to go right in there and open it up, man, and let it all just come out, right? This is the salvation moment, right? You know, he's crucifying the flesh of the heart right now, and all the dross and crap is going to come out. Because what happens is then the baby turns into this thing, and we get these flashes of the baby's head in the room. And it's like very scary, you know. Now it's like, now we've done it. But I think this must be the redemptive act because in this scene, we see that there are these sparks flying out of the electrical outlet, like something has been short-circuited. And then right after this, we see the Metatronic guy, he's trying to pull his levers, but they too are showering these sparks like they're short-circuited. So Henry has somehow, by facing his darkness and staying cool, embracing the goddess of mercy, confronting the reality of all this stuff, going through the albedo, having his head cut off, right? All of this fixes his Merkaba spin. So now he goes straight for the freaking heart of it, into the callus in the heart, opens it up, and all the gunk pours out, and he's done it. He's short-circuited the Metatronic agent's little toll house mechanism. And see, the baby's head turns into the dead planet. The baby's head turns into the dead planet, and it blows up. Or there's a big hole blown in it. And now he's confronting the thing itself. He's confronting the dark stone itself. He's in the hyperspace now. He's outside of time. He's outside of the body. He's confronting the thing itself. and it blows up. Great shot. Boom. And now, see Metatron, he's trying to mess with Henry to stop him from going into the correct light portal. But his levers don't work. They've been short-circuited. His powers have been broken. So Henry now goes into the true light. And who's there but Radiator Lady? Henry has made it. He's made it out of fallen Earth and has returned to the kingdom. And look how happy she is. You know, that someone managed to come home. That's it. I mean, to me, this story is like clearly, obviously about the redemption of the soul, the alchemical redemption of the soul. It's like alchemy. It's like alchemical Christianity. It's Rosicrucian 101. Anyways, so that's my take on Eraserhead. Oh, James says this is one of my favorite films. So much detail and thought put into every choice of the narrative, cinematography, production, design, sound effect. Totally. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how quality this movie is for a first effort. I mean, literally before this, Lynch had made, you know, just some little like moving paintings and like little stop motion things and just little bits of, you know, just experimental stuff, you know. But this thing, man, I mean, just so much, detail is that this is something that, you know, true cinema always has this quality of nothing being haphazard or chance. I mean, maybe some moments captured on film are haphazard or chance, but in terms of the detail of cinematography, lighting, production, you know, you can tell that some of these things took, you know, there are shots in here that must have taken, like they'd work on it all week just to get, you know, a few seconds of film. It's unbelievable the work, the level of craftsmanship and work that went into this thing. It is astonishing. And it's like that, you know, and then he made The Elephant Man, which, by the way, well, let's just talk about this. Dude made this movie, was a total nobody. And on the strength of this, which basically, like, so what happened? Let me go back to the story, okay? So, yeah, there was one showing of this that the AFI put on. And it was this thing, they made an event. It was going to be a midnight showing, right? And Lynch thought this was the only time this movie was ever going to be shown. It was a midnight showing, and they marketed it very mysteriously. Come see this thing. It'll blow your mind. You'll never forget it. And it had a pretty good crowd show up. And it went pretty well. And some of the people in that crowd were industry people, including the guy who ran this distribution company, Libra. And he basically approached Lynch and was like, okay, let me put this movie out. But here's what we're going to do. There's going to be no marketing. We're not going to put any money into it. We're going to put this thing out in cities, in urban places, as like a midnight showing. Right? And it's going to be there in the, you know, it's like Rocky Horror Picture Show. This would have been that era. Late 70s. It's going to be this, you know, thing. It'll just be midnight showings in urban cinemas. And it'll be a word of mouth thing. We're not going to do any media or any marketing. We're just going to put it there. and let word of mouth circulate. And the guy said, I think what's going to happen is people are going to ignore this movie, but eventually word of mouth is going to spread and you're going to get more and more and more and more people. And eventually you're going to see lines around the block. And that's exactly what happened. So this movie hit theaters in 1977, same year as Star Wars. And nobody knew what the hell it was. Nobody ever heard of David Lynch. But you just imagine you're driving around in cities and you're always seeing, Eraserhead up on the marquee of these cinemas. So people get curious. Word of mouth travels around. It's that kind of late 70s cultural environment. A lot of stoned young boomers going to weird movies at midnight. And sure enough, within a year or two, it became a thing. And you start to see huge crowds lined up for Eraserhead, and people would go see it several times trying to figure it out. And it was on the strength of that Lynch started getting some recognition and sort of began a period of people in Hollywood being aware of him. But most people didn't want anything to do with him. He got one meeting with Universal. I think it was Universal. After Eraserhead kind of became a known thing. Some Universal bigwig had a meeting with him and was like, okay, so what are you working on next? And Lynch was like, well, I'm working on a script called Ronnie Rocket. And they're like, okay, what's Ronnie Rocket? And he says, well, it's about this man who's 4 foot tall, and he has a huge ruby red pompadour that is powered by alternating current electricity. And of course, that was the end of the meeting. They were like, well, this guy's crazy. Get him out. So nobody really wanted anything to do with Lynch because he's just too weird. But somehow he got involved in the talks for The Elephant Man. I'm not actually sure how that began. Now, I remember Lynch's story is that he was, having dinner with somebody in a restaurant, and somebody mentioned the Elephant Man, and he just, when he heard the title, an explosion went off in his head, and he just knew he had to be a part of this. Not even having any idea what the story was actually about. And so somehow he got involved in the talks for The Elephant Man and became a candidate. And Elephant Man was produced by Mel Brooks. And so what happened was there was some, flirting with Mel Brooks and David Lynch. And, Mel Brooks was going to sit down to watch Eraserhead to see if he wanted to deal with this guy. And Lynch was just freaked out. He was like, once he sees Eraserhead, he's going to just kick me out the door, But Mel Brooks was like the one guy in Hollywood who saw Eraserhead and loved it. He got it. And so that was it. Then he hired Lynch to make Elephant Man, which Elephant Man was Lynch's first proper, movie with proper backing. And he was nominated for Best Director in 1980 when it came out. That's crazy, man. It's crazy that dude's first movie is Eraserhead, which is just a beautiful, a singularly unique film. And then right on the heels of it, his first major movie is Elephant Man, and he didn't win Best Director, I don't think. I think he was just nominated, but still, that's crazy. And it put Lynch in this unique position where, he was totally outside of the Hollywood thing. Totally outside. Doing weird, surrealistic, avant-garde stuff. And nobody knew who he was. He had no desire for fame or money or anything like that. He just wanted to paint. But because of Eraserhead and then The Elephant Man, he found himself in a position where for the rest of his life, he basically did what the hell he wanted to. I mean, he didn't have to compromise with any... now, Dune is an exception. Dune was a mess, and he disavowed Dune. But that's all it took for him to learn the lesson of to, never, ever give creative control over to a studio. Always insist on Final Cut, which was his policy from then on. And all of his work is him. There's no watered down, there's no compromise, there's no nothing. And that's so rare. in the world, but especially in the Hollywood world. But that's what makes him so cool. That's what makes him so unique. Also, the hair and the transcendental meditation. The Lynch Foundation is like this kind of creepy thing that goes around with billions of dollars implementing TM programs in schools and stuff. And I actually met someone last week or the week before. I was at this thing. I was playing a show, and I was talking to people, meeting people. And I was talking to this woman, and I'd been watching this maybe, and I was like, "Oh, do you know David Lynch?" And she's like, "Well, not really, but I used to work for the David Lynch Foundation." I was like, "Oh, is that so? Do tell." So she was like an executive assistant. She might have been, from what she was saying, I was like, was she the assistant to the guy? What's the guy? Who's the other guy who's like the head of the Lynch Foundation? What is his name? Bob something? Oh, no, what's his name? I can't remember his name. But anyway, she was like, pretty like, experienced the higher up behind the scenes sausage making at the Lynch Foundation. And she didn't have great things to say about it, which doesn't surprise me. TM is like creepy. But Lynch was like absolutely devoted to TM. He was like, one of those guys. So anyways, that's Eraserhead. Those are my Eraserhead takes. I think it's a beautiful, redemptive movie. And Lynch indeed has a redemptive worldview. He believes in good. He believes in real good, real evil. He's not a modernist, nor a postmodernist, nor a meta-modernist, nor none of that. He's a good old-fashioned good and evil guy. And he believes that, yes, the world we live in is absolutely plagued by violence and fear. And, he says the prisons are full and the hospitals are full. It's a mess. But that all of those things, and it shouldn't be that way, but it is. But he doesn't believe, he doesn't have a kind of, like a Kubrick sensibility of like, well, this, we just live in this dark world and this is what it is. It's like, no, it shouldn't be that way. That's Lynch. For Lynch, it shouldn't be that way. It is this way, but it shouldn't be. And I think Eraserhead is like a demonstration of the redemptive possibilities of the spirit. And indeed, it is like a literalized depiction of the spiritual life. So, that's that. And that's about all I have to say about that. So, I hope you enjoyed this film analysis. Please leave comments, like, follow, share, and subscribe, and send me some Bitcoin, for God's sake. I got the Bitcoin link down below. That's the only way I take donations. Don't worry about super chats and all that crap. Send me some Bitcoin. And make sure to stay tuned. I think next week I've got a stream about house cleaning and the end of history with a special guest on Monday. So, thanks for watching. See you later.